Welcome to another episode of Vyzer Visionaries brought to you by Vyzer. I'm your host, Litan, and with me today is Gil Eyal. Gil is here to talk to us about the mystical world of celebrity endorsements in the startup world and business, influencers, and all that. Gil, welcome. Super excited to have you.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
All right, so let's dive into some background. So this is like a unique topic, and it's really important for our listeners to understand. Like, all right, who the hell are you, and why do you have any expertise in celebrity endorsements?
Sure. So my background is digital marketing, the boring kind. I worked for different companies. Probably the most exciting true digital marketing thing I did was I worked for the company that was the biggest game developer for MySpace back in the day. So exciting, but wrong platform. And I found myself really interested in startups. And the first startup that I worked for was a company called Mobley, which was run by a guy who today is, gotten a little bit of trouble, but named Moshe Hogeg. Back in the day, the idea was that we were building an Instagram type thing before Instagram, photo and video sharing on mobile. Seemed like a very innovative idea, but we needed to get traffic. So I was tasked with finding celebrities, and I ended up doing a deal with Leonardo DiCaprio to be the first celebrity involved with that company. And that kind of changed the trajectory of my career from just digital marketing to a focus on leveraging highly recognizable faces on social media, whether it's celebrities or influencers, for brands that needed recognition and, more importantly, needed credibility by being associated with those people.
I love it. That's so interesting. Great. So firstly, yeah, Moshe Hogeg, yeah, he's now known for a lot of crypto stuff and soccer teams. Um, Back in the day, I think this was like 15 years ago, probably. I remember a friend of mine started a company called Feed, PH,
Mm-hmm.
and that was also around sort of like the other side of it, acknowledging that celebrities have followings and they should monetize it. And there's another one, forget the name, where you pay celebrities to give you,
Cameo.
yeah, Cameo, right? You can pay someone and say happy birthday and all that stuff. And so there are all these companies around it, but I still think like the holy grail is, getting that Leonardo DiCaprio on board, endorsing your brand. Like, how did that process work in that company? I know this was a long time ago and probably processes
Yeah.
have changed, but like, how did that work?
The world has really, really changed. So if we go 15 years back, I'll set the premise for you. Twitter and Facebook are both private companies um, set to go public. There's a narrative going around in the world that a huge chunk of their traffic is driven by the fact that celebrities are posting content on their pages or on their Twitter accounts. And there's an anger within the Hollywood world and the athlete world saying, wait a second, these companies are going to go public at, I forget what the numbers were, but, multiple $1 billion, which at the time was, reserved for Apple and Microsoft, those types of numbers. And these companies are going to make people very, very rich. And we're driving so much traffic and content, and we're not getting anything. And there's this, I don't know if it was a true story, but the story that 3% of the traffic on Twitter revolves around Justin Bieber's Twitter account. And I don't know if that was true or not, but that was kind of what was going around. So that was something that when Moshe Hogeg, when we talk about the execution wasn't there, but the vision was really, really strong for that product, as we can see what happened with Instagram and, TikTok today and stuff. He was very early with this idea, which is what I liked about it. So the story, the ground was ripe for us to come out with a story that said, look, we're going to do this and we're going to make you part owners of this company. We want to bring on board celebrities that are operating under the assumption that they were left behind by these other social networks. And we're going to build the next really, really big one. And I think we had the vision clearly we were out executed by Instagram, but for a while there, we did really, really well. And so the pitch to people like Leonardo DiCaprio and eventually dozens of other celebrities that we brought on board was, this time you're part of the team, and you're going to capitalize on the value that you brought into this. And remember, this is a very different time. Today, celebrities investing in startups is a very, very common thing. Back then, really, other than Ashton Kutcher, I can't think of anyone who was aggressively doing it. Ashton Kutcher was very successful back then. He had invested in a variety of companies, and he was very public about it. And so we kind of rode the right narrative at the time. It was a marketing job more than a finance, more than like a fundraising job. But it led to what eventually was my entire career to this date. and a shift in it. And then, concurrently with that, suddenly the world of influencers became a real thing. It wasn't really anything you could consider a real business before that.
So how does it work more in more recent times when you look at, let's just say I'm gonna roughly put them in three different buckets. Everything's good in threes. Tier one buckets is like the tier one celebrities, what makes them tick and become endorsed products. And then there's tier two, somewhat known celebrities, but not like a tier one. And tier three probably are sort of like not known to that many people. Maybe they might have some following on social media. So tier three, I'm assuming there's different
Yeah.
names for these buckets, but that's just easy for me because in the software world, that's the way we look at it. But how would you say the
Yeah.
different approaches are to these different tiered celebrities, and how do they look at the world from their side?
Yeah, I think it's a little it's you kind of hit it on in the right categories, but it's a little more nuanced because you could be the world's most famous chess player and have 50,000 followers, but they will listen to every single thing you have to say about chess. Or you could be someone who has 50 million followers, but nobody cares about your opinion about something. So it's more nuanced than just how many followers you have and how engaged you are. But what's shifted, so 15 years ago, if Leonardo DiCaprio walked the red carpet and mentioned Mobley, we would get 1 million installs that next night. That doesn't happen anymore because it's so diluted. It was so unique back then. We did a deal with Lil Wayne, and he put a little snippet of a song that was to come out the next day, and we crashed because within 5 minutes we had 2 million people trying to access our website. He forgot to tell us he was about to post. We weren't ready for that kind of traffic. That just doesn't happen anymore. So today, the social networks realize that these influential people, whether they're celebrities or well, they control a lot of the traffic, and the algorithms really control who sees content more than the identity of who posted it. So the world really is broken down into smaller, micro, there are different terms for it, but smaller influencers that are further broken down into subject matter experts. So I could be an expert about weight loss, and I could be super influential about weight loss, but not influential at all about anything else. And then just content creators who may have a huge audience, but they're not very, very influential about anything in particular. And then within those groups, they appeal to different types of customers. Today, I work really with just the AAA celebrities. I really want to work with really, really big celebrities or with really, really well-known subject matter experts. Companies in the world, over time, this has shifted. There are companies that have built really, really large businesses over micro influencers, creating a lot of content for them, including companies that I've invested in. But that's less and less effective as the social networks now have sophisticated AI-driven algorithms that can understand each piece of content and decide how much visibility to assign to it. So I don't know if I fully answered your question, but it's definitely
Well,
very
it was a very polite way to say that, the way my buckets are wrong, and I appreciate that. And there's a whole different way to look at them in different buckets. And I like the way you sort of framed it. It's either a large audience or an expert in a subject matter with a large audience, and doesn't you can't compare the two because they're totally different ball games.
Yeah,
But
and what you hope to achieve is really, really varies by brand. So if you're, Dunkin' Donuts, really what you want, you don't need to there's not a lot of convincing here. Like, yes, it's delicious. You need to believe it's delicious. Chances are you've tried Dunkin' Donuts at some point. You either like it or you don't. But you need a reminder that it exists. And then that point, somebody really, really broad that has a huge audience just showing it to you. And it's also food. So like we just naturally really we see food and we react to food in a certain way. And then there are much more sophisticated brands that need a lot of credibility. So if I told you, hey, I have cream that you put on your head, it's going to grow my hair back, you would say that's bullshit. I've seen 1 million scams in this space. But if I showed you The Rock using it every day for 2 months and you'd see hair growing, you might believe in it. So the use case of credibility versus visibility really varies by the type of brand that uses them. And you need to be really, really thoughtful, especially today with the algorithms and with everything works, about who you want to work with.
I want to touch back on that, or push back, not push back. I want to dive deeper into that. All right. So if Beyonce says she loves this new chess app, I'm still sure that that chess app will get a ton of downloads, right? Even though she's not subject matter on that. And even though the algorithm won't catch it, it'll still move the needle for that specific company,
Yeah,
right?
but everyone's more sophisticated. It's not, Back in the day before Google came in, we would do advertising in the radio. You had no way of measuring who got to your website from which ad. It was very difficult to track and what happened to them later. Today, we track really deep into it. So yes, Beyonce would probably get you a lot of people looking at your page, maybe even installing. But would she get you the kind of audience that you want on your app and get them to use it again and spend money on it? Probably she would probably struggle, again, depending on the app, as opposed to, let's say, what's the name? I forget it. The Gary Kasparov saying, "Guys, I've tried all of the chess apps.
No, all right, okay, I
Nothing
get it.
compares to this app. And by the way, every week I'm going to post a new challenge that you can solve on the app." And suddenly, you have significantly more value, probably for a lot less of a spend. But those are extremes, right? Every
Right,
case, or so you have to be really, really thoughtful about how you do it, and that's where I try to bring value when I get involved. Getting to celebrities today is a lot easier than it used to be. Today, they're on social media, they have managers. The real value is about negotiating and finding the right people and activating them in a smart way.
right. And so you just to clarify, so still you'd always prefer a subject matter celebrity than a tier one Hollywood celebrity.
No, not always. Look, if you give me a brand that's already well known in a space that doesn't require any explaining, like we said, Dunkin' Donuts or Coca-Cola or Hershey's chocolate, really all you need is someone that people watch, showing you, reminding you that it exists and mentioning that it's delicious, right? There's no real convincing. You believe me it's delicious because I
Right,
can eat it and look. The more you need to gain audience support and belief and credibility and explain, the more you're in a crowded market and you're less known, the more we put an emphasis on the celebrity or influencer's actual influence or actual credibility with that audience. And that really varies based on subject matter expert. Gary Kasparov, the example we gave, very immaterial as far as which chocolate bar he likes.
right. There are celebrities that are used to being in the spotlight, and there are celebrities that are, subject matters that aren't used to being in the spotlight. Would you say it's more, I mean, obviously there's always a compensation, but who do you see is easier or I don't know what the wording for it would be, but like I'd assume people that are in the spotlight are a lot more accustomed to being in front of a camera, sharing like interesting stuff, credibility. I don't know about credibility, but like just being interesting. Whereas subject matter celebrities, they might not be good at that, right? And
Yeah.
so it's like tricky, I guess, to find like the correct one to match with the correct brand.
That's
Uh,
where it gets complicated, right? And a lot of it is art and not science. You kind of have to get a feel for will it work or not. But we do a few things to kind of take to evaluate that. One is every single time we activate someone, we also run digital advertising, ideally before, to control groups to see how they react to the content, but at the very least afterwards. And typically, if you have good influencer or celebrity content, you want to cut parts of it and run ads and then prove to yourself that this is performing better than your other digital marketing channels. So it's more than just them posting content and hoping that the networks give it a lot of visibility. The second component is really exactly that, which is what have they built? The fact that you're a beautiful woman and you've amassed 50 million followers on your half naked photos on Instagram is very different than having a podcast where you're speaking to an audience every single week about politics or about tech or about medical devices or things like that. And you have to consistently come up with new content. And you have an audience that's consistently actively coming to consume that content as opposed to passively consuming it on social networks. So there are a lot of different things that we look at to evaluate who is going to be effective. Are we always right? Absolutely not. But I think it's similar to, startup investing. While you're often going to be wrong when you're an investor, you can definitely minimize the cases or reduce the amount of cases where you're wrong or increase your chances of being right by being very, very diligent in knowing what you're looking for.
Got it. All right. Now to the, the money time question. All right. So you understand who the brand is. You found, relevant either subject matter celebrities or just like massive celebrities that might be a good match. How does it work, reaching out to one and then offering and then like what's common practice in that field?
So it's a Wild West. Sometimes the bigger they are, the more you have to go through a management team The good news is that more and more managers realize today, after seeing Ryan Reynolds and Gal Gadot and other influencers or celebrities that have been able to uh, jump past whatever space that they were a celebrity in and into other spaces and build companies, realize that there's a big opportunity and money that they're leaving on the table. So 5 years ago, it was very hard to get celebrities to work for equity or things like that. Often they just wanted cash and put the entire risk with whoever was reaching out to them. So there's more and more openness to this, but at the end of the day, if you don't have your own network and you haven't built it for years, it's a lot of networking, trying to get in front of the people that are close to those celebrities, trying to get a meeting, pitching the team, and then hoping that the team goes and shows it to that person. And this world is filled with people that claim to have connections that don't have connections, that try to say, oh, I hang out with these guys or I know these guys, but they really don't have any impact on their ability to close deals. I personally really just like to go through management teams. I know it's not a popular thing to say. People want to believe that I hang out with celebrities, know them, and that they're my best friends, and that's why they're going to do a deal. That's not the case. I know I look like the kind of guy who's a party animal and knows all of Hollywood, but it's not the case. It's more about my track record. I'll reach out and say, hey, this is my name. Here are the companies that I've been involved with. Some of them have been really, really successful, and I think I have something for your client. And having a discussion. And by the way, it has to start similar to the way that founders approach a VC. Yes, you have two or three that you really, really want, but you really have to have a list of 50 because you're going to hear a lot of no's, unless you're, so
Right.
successful in the past that everybody wants to invest with you, but that's a minority.
Do these managers usually are they more like are they susceptible to this or are they more like skeptical and like these gatekeepers that need to get something in return? Like, do they get something for just making a conversation or making an introduction or like these like fancy dinners to take them out to dinner and then pitch it? Like, how does that work?
No, it's not, they're very open to hearing pitches because they get paid by the celebrity. Their job is to find the celebrity the right opportunities. They are also very risk averse, and the last thing they want is for the celebrity to attach a deal that was not successful to them. So it's very easy for them to do deals that are cash for services. They really like that. However, what's happened over the last few years is you see the Honest Company and you see Ryan Reynolds and you see Gal Gadot and you see all these celebrities that suddenly have become really successful also as endorsement deals and companies that they're actually owners in. And so their clients feel left out. There's fear of being involved. So suddenly there's a lot more openness to it. It's gotten to the point where some of the big agencies have opened divisions that are responsible for finding their talent opportunities like this. And more of these managers are looking for those opportunities, but they're looking to de-risk those opportunities. So how do they de-risk it? One is if part of it can be in cash, that's great. Two is if there's a really, really strong team or really, really strong track record. And that's where I can help a lot of the earlier founders, which is typically they wouldn't have the track record that would get these celebrities excited. But if I come in and say, look, I'm investing in this company, and here's my track record, here's companies that I've sold and companies that have done well with celebrities, and here are celebrities that have made a lot of money with me, that'll get them to take a pitch. You still have to win that pitch. It's very hard. It's not at all easier than raising capital from traditional VCs. Often it'd be harder because you're dealing with people who are significantly less experienced in this scenario, as opposed to VCs that have a whole ecosystem that
Right.
drives decision making.
Now, I'm curious because, first of all, a lot of our audience is in different industry, like not in the founder tech VC world. But also, and in this world, there's this big story about, Tony Robbins, who endorsed a really big private equity firm called Kaz. And, as the story goes, he loved their investment strategy. And then he wanted a bigger stake, and then now he endorses them. And so it seems like a different approach where obviously you can't really control it, but the private equity industry is a lot less sexy than the VC startup world, but it's really interesting because there's a lot more money in it, and it's cash flowing. It's just, I'm curious, like, have you heard of like celebrities endorsing these types of
Oh, yeah.
firms like Tony Robbins?
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, the most clear example is FTX in crypto. I know it's not the same as a private equity firm, but it's still kind of the same idea, which is it was Tom Brady and a lot of other celebrities who I don't want to say names because if I get someone wrong, I don't want to give them a bad reputation. But it's clearly they know nothing about investing in crypto, and suddenly they're in love with this crypto firm and they're recommending it. And of course, it ended up crashing, and it was a bad ending. And but clearly they were able, this is a firm that was very, very good at measuring impact, and clearly they were able to generate credibility and visibility and user acquisition through these celebrities, who now are being sued by the investors and by the people who gave money to this company as users. So this was a crypto exchange. So both the shareholders and I believe the shareholders and also just the people who use that platform are now suing some of these celebrities, saying you misled us to believe that you actually did some research as opposed to just got money for promoting this. But it's very, very clear that it could work. And we've seen it across a variety of industries. Tony Robbins specifically is extra problematic to me because the type of followership that he has, in my mind, is broken down into some people that really admire his approach to life and the way that he thinks about life. And within that group, a lot of people that kind of blindly follow anything he says. And they are definitely not sophisticated investors, definitely not doing any of their own due diligence on the things that he says. And so tying them into a risky investment environment with, I don't know that specific firm, maybe the best firm in the world, I don't know, but implying that he can really tell the difference between one private equity to another. I don't, you and I are both kind of in the space. I don't think we have the skill set to really tell you the difference between one private equity to another and which one's a better investment. And so I think it's a very, very dangerous space, but it works. I would refuse to work for them, but it works.
I mean, listen, I agree with what you're saying, but this takes another approach sort of to the endorsement world. Whereas I'd assume Tony Robbins and his money managers have done many, many hundreds of LP investments in different funds, and they probably know what they're doing. And so I'm not saying that people should follow him blindly. That's a problem across the board. The herd mentality isn't just something that's, that exists with celebrities. They obviously have a bigger role because they affect a lot more people at once. But yeah, I get what you're saying. Overall, as an investor, you should always make your own, like do your own due diligence and not trust people blindly.
So that assumption that you said, which that they have done hundreds of investments and everything, may be true. I don't know, but it would be different for me if he issued out a release that said, "Look, I've invested with hundreds of different PE firms. Nobody's produced, even though we know that firms produce really well and they don't produce really well a lot of the time. But if at the very least he said, based on the experience and the fact that I have a team of people that are professionals in this space, this is our recommendation," or maybe there's something there. But the problem with Tony Robbins is a lot of his stuff is like based, trust me type stuff, right? And so to me, my guess is a lot of people are who should not be investing in private equity at all are now thinking about investing in private equity. And not only that, are they thinking about investing in that specific private equity. And so I didn't, should he go to prison? I don't know. I think that's a little too far.
Yeah.
Should he have done that? I think that with great power comes great responsibility, and you owe it to your audience that follows you to make better decisions. Then again, who am I? He's way more successful than I am. I can't compare, so maybe I'm just not doing it right.
All right, but back to the endorsement. All right, so now I've my last question, all right, and then we can dive into sort of some summary stuff. So when you look at sort of I know you're after tier one, subject matter experts and celebrities, but there's a whole world of like tier 2, 3, 4, I guess. And a lot of these influencers online that have made a business of endorsing. That's they're influencers. They also have a really nice social media following, and they're really good at content they create. And so there's that bucket of people that have been doing this, they're used to getting paid for promoting stuff or getting equity in things. And then there's a whole another side of it where there are people that are good at creating content and they've never endorsed or promoted anything yet. Which of those do you feel are easier to convince to promote a brand?
Yeah, I definitely think it's the other side. So what's happened is, the market reacts late to changes in technology. And in the last 3, 4 years, the social networks have changed the way that their algorithms work in a way that it really doesn't matter how big your audience is on these networks. The algorithms have a significantly more impactful part in deciding who sees your content. And the result is that people who have very large followership, who were used to charging a lot of money for their audience, don't really own that audience anymore on the social networks. So strictly speaking, on the social networks, my advice to brands is to save their money, go for these smaller content creators, the ones who are either user-generated content or smaller, like 2, 3, 5,000 followers, who create content that you are really, really impressed with. Create a lot of it, and then run ads around it. See, A/B test the different ones, look for the ones that perform really, really well, and take that budget that you saved by not paying $50,000 to work with a really, really big influencer and put that in digital marketing. You'll gain a few things. One is you'll actually be doing informed promotion to a very targeted audience. When somebody has 50 million or 50,000 followers, a large chunk of them just isn't relevant for your brand. And then you also gain the fact that you can actually measure the results, because now you can actually place trackable links, and you can place pixels and all these other things that you could do with advertising. I know it's not, people in the influencer marketing space don't like hearing this, and I get criticized a lot for it, but I think in the traditional sense, influencer marketing has been killed by the social networks. It's a very, very difficult, not impossible, but very difficult decision and very difficult idea to implement today of growth simply by having influencers post about your content. Again, unless it's a very niche space where there are influencers that the audience flocks to them, it's very easy to identify, and they're the ones you need. Often it's about credibility more than visibility with those types.
That's super interesting. I love it. All right, Gil, this has been a super interesting episode. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure our audience has as well. If anyone wants to reach out to you, what's the best way to do it?
The easiest way is gil@stardustventures.us, or, Twitter or anywhere I am, just Gil Eyal, LinkedIn. I'm very responsive.
Awesome. Well, that's another great session. Thank you for joining us and listening into a unique conversation about celebrity endorsements, different than our usual content, which is more about passive investing and how to be a better investor and all that. But I love this. Thank you so much for joining us. And until next time, invest safely and wisely.